What's up, y'all? Did you miss us? It's okay. You don't have to tell me. I know you did. So, just to catch you up to speed, this is now a barbecue channel. So let's do some barbecue. Starting with a brisket. How lovely. If you have an empty shaker bottle, I suggest getting it and getting you some 16 mesh black pepper, some diamond crystal kosher salt, and some granulated garlic. I have all those things in here. You're gonna do 1 part salt, 2 parts black pepper, and 1/2 salt of the granulated garlic. I don't know how to do half. We're not cutting off a finger for that. I'm not doing it. Sorry. YouTube would not appreciate that. Anyways, put all that in your shaker and shake that sucker up. So now you have some fancy pants SPG. Delicious. All you need for good barbecue. So, open up your brisket. If yours is as cold as mine, you might have a little bit of ice. That's fine. Annoying, but fine. Oh, yeah. I gotta do a bunch of these today. So we're gonna be quick on this right here. Dry your meat. This will help with a lot of things like your grip while you're cutting. And also that Maillard reaction or whatever that causes it to turn black. It's not really the Maillard reaction because we're not cooking this like a steak. It's gonna be slow smoked. The smoke is actually gonna bond with the pepper and the salt and maybe the garlic a little bit, but more the pepper. And it's going to form that delicious, crusty, smoky bark that everybody loves so much. So, oh my. All my sauce bottles just went everywhere. That's fine. Back to drying off this huge chunk of meat. The problem with the ice crystals is as you dry, the ice crystals are going to melt and cause for more drying to happen. So, if, like I said, if you can, remove as much of that ice before you start your dry. I will say this, a nice cold brisket is a lot easier to cut than one that's thawed out, room temperature, or any of that, because then you're just dealing with, like, I don't know how to put it. But it's soft and pliable. All right, top of your brisket, you got this mohawk right here. Chop that off. Put that aside. We're gonna use that for chili or potato soup or burgers or sausage. All right, none of that stuff, flip back over. Right here, you can see this fat chunk right here. This is called the decal fat. This is not gonna break down. Okay, so what we want to do is we want to remove this. Now, I have seen people say that sometimes you can just pull the decal right out with your hands. Now, I've done like 1,000 briskets, and in all that time, I've only been able to pull. I try every single time. Oh, okay, well, I can't get underneath. In all that time, I've only pulled off one by hand, and it was recently. Now, I will say I did just trim a brisket right before this, and I was able to peel it out, and I probably could have worked and yanked it off and done it by hand. But I gotta do a lot of these, and I got a lot to do, so it's not time to play. That being said, back to this decal. So what I like to do is I like to find like an end over here or over here. Sometimes there's a little flake. Pull it up, right? And this kind of lets you start to see where the decal is. Now there's gonna be a little bit of meat right here, which is gonna be attached to it. Separate that meat and start carving in. And you'll start to learn the difference as you carve. We're gonna do like a swoop here to swoop out this chunk. But as you start carving, as you start doing more of these, you're gonna realize that there's a very big difference in texture when you're cutting through fat than when you are through the meat. So when you're cutting through the meat, you're gonna feel tendons cutting and popping and all that. But when you cut through the fat, it's gonna feel like you're cutting through clay. Like, so think about like when you were a kid, if you ever used a grout to like carve clay, or cutting through cheese, feels like you're cutting through cheese. It's really soft cheese. So, like I said, we're gonna separate right here. There's just a little bit of meat attached, and then we're gonna swoop behind it. Let me turn this so you can see it. And then once we swoop behind it, we're gonna come right along this line right here. All right? Well, and you might take a little bit of meat with you. Trust me, it doesn't matter. Like, I got this little bit right here. It's actually mostly fat, but I'm planning on making some sausages, so I need a little extra fat, so we're gonna keep that. I did butcher that just a little bit. You can see right here, there's a nice little chunk. I'm just gonna swoop that off. And again, we're gonna put that to the side. Now you can take this, you can cut this down into a like smaller, or you can even just score the crap out of it, and you can throw it on your smoker, or you can throw it in a pot, large pot, cook it down, render it out, get all that beef tallow out of that. You can use that for cooking, like a number of different things. I know people who use it for face products, skincare or whatever. I have a bunch of tallow right now, and so I don't really have use for this. I'm just gonna throw it away. People are gonna get mad at me. I don't care. I got nowhere to put it. So I'm gonna trim up just a couple little pieces of this fat, and it's still here. And I'm gonna show you the difference here. You can see this red meat, you can see this gray meat. Now, as far as I understand, this gray meat won't hurt you. There's nothing wrong with it. It's just oxidized. So the oxygen has changed the color of this meat. Color change doesn't mean anything. It just means that it looks different. I'm obsessive compulsive. I want to produce the best products I possibly can for my people. So in my crazy head, this tastes different. So I will cut this off and I will throw it away. And again, it really doesn't make a difference. I could have thrown this in the sausage. I choose not to. I end up with enough trimmings and scrap after the fact that these little slivers don't mean anything to me. So, it's usually only on this one side, which is a shame because you can see how nice that marbling is right there. I mean, oh my gosh. That's crazy nice. Look at that. So, now you can see we have this big old chunk missing. Totally fine. At this point, you're going to come back over, other side. And I like to round out these corners and make this thing a little bit more aerodynamic. Now you can do this before you flip it, after you flip it. Really just depends on how I'm feeling. Sometimes I just get right to it. But I'm going to do a little swoop right here and just round this corner out. And like I usually recommend doing this in a few cuts. Don't just be like, wah! You can do that, it's fine. But you know, if you haven't done a lot of briskets, if you haven't been doing that motion a lot, you could butcher this brisket real fast and screw it all up. I mean, I say screw it up. It's really hard to screw up a brisket with the trim unless you're leaving on a bunch of fat, but we'll get to that. So same thing with this on the thicker end. I want to round this out. And this is frozen, so my knife is going to hate the rest of this trim. Oh, poor thing, I'm so sorry. Boom. But as you can see now, this brisket's all nice and rounded out. Yeah, that's fine. At this point, what we got to do is there's a lot of excess fat here. So, for example, you can see like right here, do you want to bite into something that's like 50-50 fat? No, you don't. It's going to be gross unless it's pork belly, which is delicious. And for some reason, the rules don't apply there. But we want to get this down to about 1/4 inch. So typically, oh yeah, this is nice. So you can see right here, this is gorgeous. Absolutely perfect. From here over, we need to trim down a little bit. So I like to start on the top here. And once again, we're going to just try and keep rounding this out. We want this to be aerodynamic. And the reason for that is you want the smoke and the heat to pass over your brisket, not hit a wall and get stuck just cooking one side of your brisket. It's going to make it crappy. You'll get char on one end. It won't be as soft. The bark will be crunchy, which if you like that, that's fine, but that's not for me at all. And if you scalp this, it's fine. Like, go to my Instagram. Oh, you won't see it to my stories. If you see this today, December 19th, I think, 2024, go to my story in the next 24 hours and you'll see how badly I trimmed this brisket. I did it when I was just like in a hurry and I was like, oh, it looks like there's a lot of fat here. No, there was not a lot of fat there. I took a huge chunk. There's a big old crater in this sucker. Now the problem with that is once your brisket starts releasing juices, fat, water, it's gonna pool up in these craters and it's gonna really mess up your bark. So if you're opening and checking for any reason and you see that, if you got a second, pour that off real quick. Help that brisket out a little bit. Okay, this is really nice at this point. I can feel like there's more fat right here. Still, oh, I was wrong, it was just frozen. See, so even that, I just scalped that a little bit. All right, so then we're gonna come around here. Take a look here, we got a big old chunk. I'm just gonna swoop that out. Boom, same thing with this back right here. I'm gonna round that out. Bam, boom, bam, bang, boom, something. Normally I would keep this, but I really want this looking nice. Showing off with these. So, right here is what I call the second decal. That's not what it's called, but that's what I call it because it's a big old chunk of fat that's also not going to render down, and it's right underneath the mohawk. So you trimmed off the mohawk, right? At this point, what I want to do is I want to separate the underside of the mohawk from the fat. And sometimes you get some stringy stuff here or some skin, right? That really helps you get a grip on things. So right here I can see it starts. I'm going to sink in and I'm once again going to swoop out. Swoop. Right, and I'm coming back around. See how I peeled that out? Nice. Don't cut towards yourself like I did. Get a little bit more. So right here, it drops off. This is what I like to say is the separation of the fatty from the lean. That's not true. The lean actually is all of this underneath, and the fatty is like from here on up on the top half. But there's this, like where the mohawk ends, is this little hump, and this is just fat. So once again, I like to swoop and get rid of that fat. This also gives me a nice indicator of where I'm going to cut my brisket when I bisect it, because some people want just lean, some people want just fatty. So when I bisect it, I use this as an indicator, right? So here we are. We've swooped out a good amount of that fat that's not going to render down. Again, we don't want just mouthfuls of fat. It's kind of gross. Fat is flavor, but it also has a consistency problem, in my opinion. So now you're thinking like, oh God, we have this giant gaping crater, cave even, in the side of my brisket. This is all gonna burn up. Why did we do that? Well, at this point, what I'm gonna do is I'm actually gonna roll this down. I'm gonna push this down into itself, right? Check that out. So what this does is this is gonna fill in that empty crevice with this chunk of meat. You could even probably leave on the mohawk, but I think the mohawk's just got some skin on it that I don't like. So I like taking it off and just using it for sausage and stuff. But now you can see this is a much more uniform and even brisket, and this even mashed down into this. Now if you do this properly and you cook this right, this should stay down. And then you end up with a solid piece of meat. So I'm going to show you in just a second. I'm going to season the inside of this. Whoever gets this piece basically gets just numerous burnt ends with flavoring inside. It's really nice. It takes a piece that would have been garbage to eat and you would have got complaints about and turned it into something people are going to lust over. All right, that being said, let's season this bad boy. When I season, I do the sides first, and the reason is an aesthetic. So first off, don't forget your sides. They get eaten too. They're delicious, and they need bark too. Bark comes from your seasoning. So, it's right here. I like to give my seasoning a little sideways shake here with like a rotation. You see I'm kind of doing like a wheel motion, and this gives it a nice even distribution of everything. The granulated garlic's a lot like smaller. It's going to fall through all the cracks of the salt and the black pepper. It's going to fall on the bottom. And then let's say you do 2 or 3 briskets in a row. When you get to the end of when you're on like that third brisket, you're like, man, where's all my pepper? You're like, why doesn't this look peppery? It looks like there's a bunch of garlic on here, but no pepper. Now I love garlic, but you put too much garlic on it, it's going to cake up. It's going to prevent the smoke from getting to your meat. Nobody wants that. The whole point of smoking it is to get that smoke flavor on there. That I believe, and it's a Texas kind of thing, but your flavor comes from salt, pepper, smoke. I like garlic, so I add a little bit of garlic. Salt, pepper, garlic, smoke. That's what I tell people. That's all it is. And as you can see, that's all it is. Well, I don't know if you didn't see me make this, but trust me. All right, so like I said, I do sides first. I usually have this on the side of my cutting board because my cutting board doesn't move. I'll put like something underneath it, like a wet rag, so it doesn't move, and then it busts up against it so it doesn't slide while I'm doing this. But I got this open. Do the side. You want to stay about a foot up and go with the meat. Don't be like trying to like, you're gonna waste so much seasoning. Boom. All right, cool. And then I just turn the whole thing. Oh. Make sure it's open enough for everything to get out. As I do this, I like to kind of pat or push the seasoning in. You notice I didn't use a binder. I don't normally use a binder. I find that by the time I am done trimming the brisket, it will become tacky. And if it's not tacky, if you wait another 5 or 10 minutes, it will become tacky on its own. And that's all of its own proteins just becoming sticky. So as you can see, I'm going to like season the inside of this. And I'm not like, I'm very liberal about it. Like I put a bunch of seasoning in there. You know, it's going to get sealed in and it's going to be great. This one's being a real jerk. All right. All right, now we've got our sides done. I can use a little more right here. That's great. Do the bottom. And again, this is an aesthetic thing. You want this to look good when it's done. If you rub, you're going to get all this proteins mixed in with it. It's going to cause for a cakey, nasty looking consistency on your meat, and that's not good. So even though it's called a rub, don't rub it. You'll notice that I shake this periodically. Again, I still want a nice even distribution of my seasonings. Boom. Like right here, always have a problem with that. I like to take some of the seasoning on the side here. Just brush it to the side. Grab this. Gorgeous. Bottom done, looking good. Flip it over. Let me give this one final tuck. Really make sure it's good and stuck. And again, like the proteins are breaking down and making this sticky and tacky. So that should just stay shut, which is awesome. All right, and then from here, and as you can see, I'm way above this thing, and that causes for much better distribution of the rub. "20 minutes to trim a brisket." Terrible. I did one in 3 minutes the other day, but I also wasn't teaching. So, all right, I'm gonna get this. I'm gonna turn it around, show you what we did here, how it looks. I hit the wrong button, so if this is spliced in funny, I'm sorry. But yeah, here we go. It's gorgeous, isn't it? So I'm gonna let this sit ideally overnight, but really just like an hour is fine. And then we're gonna fire up the pit, throw it on there.